Introduction. The most important skill you can learn. Do you ever feel stuck when trying to learn something new? Maybe you're studying for an exam, practicing a sport, or trying to improve your English. But no matter how much time you spend, the progress feels slow. It's frustrating, right? Today we're looking at Learning How to Learn by Barbara Oakley, Terence Sejnowski, and Alistair McConville. This book isn't about teaching one subject, like maths or science. It's about giving you the tools to learn anything more effectively. Think of it as a manual for your brain, a complete guide to using it in the smartest way possible. Whether you're a student, a professional, or just curious about the world, the ideas in this book can help you learn faster, remember more, and feel more confident. And if you're learning English, these methods will make every new word, phrase, and grammar rule easier to remember and use. Here's the good news. You don't need to be a genius to learn effectively. The most successful learners aren't always the smartest. They're the ones who know how to study, practice, and build knowledge step by step. This book shows you exactly how to do that. So, if you're ready to make every study session count and see your skills grow faster than ever, this is where your next chapter begins. Meet the authors. Before we look at the strategies in learning how to learn, it's worth getting to know the three authors, because their backgrounds explain why this book is so practical and inspiring. Barbara Oakley didn't start as a top student. In fact, she struggled with maths and science in school. Later in life, she decided to challenge herself, applying learning techniques that turned her into a successful engineering professor. Her story shows that with the right approach, you can master skills you once thought were impossible, just like how some people go from struggling with English grammar to speaking fluently. Terence Sejnowski is one of the world's leading neuroscientists. He studies how the brain works, especially how it learns and remembers. His research helps explain why certain study methods are more effective than others. Alistair McConville is a teacher and education leader passionate about helping young people enjoy learning. He brings a practical classroom perspective, showing how these techniques work in everyday life. Together, they've created a guide that combines science, personal experience, and practical know-how, so you can start applying these techniques immediately and see results, whether in history, coding, or English communication. And because their advice comes from both personal struggles and professional expertise, the ideas in this book feel achievable, even for someone who has doubted their ability to learn in the past. This combination of real-life experience, proven research, and practical tips sets the stage for the core ideas we'll explore next. Beginning with how your brain uses two very different modes of thinking to understand and remember new information. Two modes of thinking. One of the first big ideas in learning how to learn is that your brain doesn't just work in one single way. It uses two distinct modes of thinking, and knowing how to move between them can make a huge difference in how well you learn and remember new things. The first is called the focused mode. This is when your attention is sharp and concentrated, like aiming a spotlight directly on the task in front of you. In focused mode, you're deliberately working through problems, absorbing details, and applying what you've learned. If you're studying English, this might mean carefully going through a grammar exercise, paying attention to every verb tense, or practicing the exact pronunciation of a tricky word. It's intense, structured, and essential for building accuracy. But your brain also has a second mode, known as the diffused mode. This is more like the soft glow of a lantern, where your thoughts spread out and connect in ways you might not expect. In diffused mode, your mind is relaxed, and ideas can drift together more freely. You're not forcing yourself to solve a problem. Instead, you're letting your brain work in the background. You've probably experienced this without realizing it. Maybe you couldn't remember a word in English, only for it to pop into your head while you were walking or washing the dishes. Or perhaps you finally understood a difficult concept after you'd stopped thinking about it directly. That's diffused mode helping you connect the dots. The real magic happens when you switch between these two modes. Focused mode helps you understand and practice, while diffused mode gives your brain space to process, organize, and link the information together. The authors recommend starting with focused study. For example, reading and practicing a new set of English phrases, and then deliberately taking a short break to let your mind wander. This could be a walk, a few minutes of light exercise, or even listening to music. When you return to the task, you'll often find the material feels clearer and easier to recall. Importantly, diffused mode isn't wasted time. It's an essential part of deep learning. The alternation between the two modes helps you store information in long-term memory, understand complex ideas, and solve problems more creatively. By learning to work with both modes, rather than forcing your brain to stay in one, you can make studying more productive and far less exhausting. Chunking. Now that we've looked at the two modes of thinking, the book introduces another powerful idea: chunking. If the two modes of thinking are the how of learning, chunking is the what. It's about how your brain organizes the information you take in so you can use it more easily. A chunk is simply a group of smaller bits of information that your brain has learned to treat as a single unit. When you first start learning something, every detail feels separate. For example, if you're learning English, you might have to think about each word in the phrase on the other hand one at a time. On the other hand. But as you hear and use this phrase more often, your brain stops seeing it as four words and stores it as a single idea with a specific meaning. That's a chunk. Chunks are incredibly useful because they save mental space. Your working memory is the part of your brain that holds what you are thinking about right now, and it can only keep a few pieces of information at once. If every skill you use was made of unconnected pieces, you'd be overwhelmed. But when those pieces become chunks, you can work with more complex ideas without overloading your mind. Building chunks takes three key ingredients: understanding, practice, and context. First, you need to actually understand what you're learning, not just memorize it. Second, you must practice it often enough for your brain to form strong connections. And third, you need to see or use it in real situations. Without context, chunks remain fragile and are easily forgotten. Think about learning to drive. At first, you consciously think about each movement: pressing the clutch, changing gears, checking mirrors. Over time, these steps blend together into a smooth, automatic action. That's chunking at work. The same is true when you learn English. You might begin by studying grammar rules and vocabulary lists, but with practice and real-life use, these pieces merge into natural conversation. The authors point out that the more chunks you have, the faster you can learn new things. Each new chunk connects to others, creating a network in your brain that makes recalling and applying knowledge much easier. Over time, this network becomes a powerful foundation for advanced learning. Beating procrastination. One of the biggest barriers to learning is not how smart you are, how much free time you have, or even how good your memory is. It is procrastination. You probably know the feeling well. You sit down to study, and suddenly everything else becomes more interesting. You remember that you need to reply to a message, organize your desk, wash the dishes, or check just one more thing online. The authors of Learning How to Learn explain that this is not simple laziness. It is your brain's way of avoiding discomfort. When you are about to start a difficult task, your brain senses that it will take effort and might cause stress. To protect you from that uncomfortable feeling, it tries to pull you towards something easier and more enjoyable. The book uses an idea from chemistry to explain this, called activation energy. In chemistry, activation energy is the small spark needed to start a reaction. Learning works the same way. Starting a task takes more effort than continuing it, so if you can lower the amount of effort it takes to start, you make it much easier to get going. The first step in beating procrastination is to recognize the habit loop. You face a challenging task, you feel discomfort, you avoid it, and then you feel relief. The relief rewards the avoidance, so the habit grows stronger. To break the loop, reduce the activation energy by making the first step as small and simple as possible. One of the most effective methods is the Pomodoro technique. Set a timer for 25 minutes, choose one specific task, and work only on that task until the timer rings. Then take a short break, perhaps 5 minutes to stretch, make tea, or listen to music. Because the work period is short, your brain feels less resistance. Often, once you begin, you will find it easier to keep going beyond the first 25 minutes. This is especially helpful when learning English. If you have been avoiding writing, do not tell yourself that you must write for an hour. Instead, promise to spend just 25 minutes writing a short paragraph about your day or practicing a few new expressions. Often, once you begin, the hardest part is already behind you. Another useful trick is to shrink the task to the smallest possible action. If you are putting off reading an English article, commit to reading only the first sentence. If you need to review grammar, open your book and highlight just one example. These tiny steps break the resistance cycle and help you slide naturally into focused work. The authors remind us that the goal is not to force yourself to work harder. It is to make it easier to start. Once you take that first step, momentum can carry you forward, and the resistance will begin to fade. Improving memory. Starting to learn something is only the first step. The real test is whether you can remember it when you need it. The authors of Learning How to Learn explain that memory is not just one single system. You have working memory, which is like a small notepad that holds the information you are thinking about right now. You also have long-term memory, which is more like a library where you store knowledge for future use. The challenge is moving information from the notepad into the library. One of the most effective ways to strengthen memory is through spaced repetition. This means reviewing information at intervals rather than cramming it all in one session. For example, if you are learning new English words, You might review them right after you first learn them, then again the next day, then 2 days later, then a week later. Each review strengthens the memory, and the spaces between reviews force your brain to work harder to recall the information, which makes it stick more firmly. The authors also recommend using visualization and association. Your brain is naturally good at remembering images and stories. If you can link a new idea to something vivid, unusual, or personal, it becomes easier to recall. For example, to remember the English word whisper, you might picture a close friend leaning toward you and speaking softly into your ear. That image will make the meaning more memorable. Another powerful method is self-testing. Instead of just rereading notes, close the book and try to recall the information without looking. If you struggle and then find the correct answer, the act of retrieval strengthens the memory far more than passive review. In English learning, this could mean covering the translations of new vocabulary and trying to recall them, or listening to a short dialogue and then explaining it aloud in your own words. The key is to engage actively with the material. The more you connect with it, visualize it, test yourself on it, and return to it over time, the stronger and more reliable your memory will become. Sleep, exercise, and the brain. Learning isn't just about what you do at your desk. It's also about what you do when you're not studying. Learning how to learn makes it clear that sleep and exercise are not optional extras. They're essential parts of building knowledge. When you sleep, your brain is far from idle. It organizes and strengthens the connections you made during the day, almost like a librarian filing books into the right place. If you've been studying English vocabulary, sleep helps lock those words into long-term memory. That's why pulling an all-nighter before an exam is so damaging. You lose the very process that would help you remember what you studied. Exercise is equally important. Moving your body increases blood flow and oxygen to the brain, which improves focus, creativity, and problem-solving. Even light activity, like a brisk 10-minute walk, can refresh your mind and make your next study session more effective. For example, if you've been struggling to understand a tricky English grammar point, a short walk can often clear the fog and help the explanation click when you return. The authors suggest viewing sleep and exercise as active parts of your learning plan, not as time taken away from it. A well-rested, physically active brain learns faster, remembers longer, and makes studying less of a struggle. If you want your learning to be more efficient, don't just think about the hours you spend working. Think about the quality of your rest and movement as well. Learning from mistakes and developing grit. One of the most encouraging ideas in learning how to learn is that mistakes are not proof that you have failed. They are signs that you are learning. When you make a mistake, your brain receives feedback that shows where your understanding is incomplete. This gives you a clear direction for improvement. Without mistakes, it is easy to assume you have mastered something when you really have not. The authors explain that struggling with a problem actually changes your brain. Each time you try, adjust, and try again, you are strengthening the connections between your brain cells. This process is called building neural pathways. The discomfort you feel when something is difficult is often a sign that your brain is about to grow. For people learning English, this is an important reminder. You might mispronounce a word, use the wrong verb tense, or forget a phrase you thought you knew. It can feel embarrassing in the moment, but each time you correct yourself and try again, you make it more likely you will get it right next time. This is where the concept of grit comes in. Grit means having the courage and determination to keep working toward a goal even when progress is slow, mistakes are frequent, or the process is frustrating. It is the ability to keep going despite challenges, rather than giving up when things get hard. People with grit do not expect learning to be effortless. They know that persistence and consistent effort often matter more than natural talent. The authors encourage seeing challenges as puzzles to solve rather than problems to avoid. When you approach learning with grit, every mistake becomes a step forward rather than a step back. Over time, this mindset transforms how you feel about difficulty. Instead of fearing it, you begin to welcome it as a sign that you are moving toward mastery. Recap and key takeaways. We have covered many ideas from learning how to learn, so let's take a moment to bring them together. These key points are the foundation of becoming a more effective learner, whether you are studying English, science, history, or any other subject. First, your brain uses two modes of thinking. The focused mode is for deep concentration on details, while the diffused mode is for relaxed thinking and making creative connections. Switching between them allows you to understand more deeply and remember more clearly. Second, chunking helps you group separate pieces of information into larger, meaningful units. This saves mental energy and makes complex skills easier to handle. Third, beating procrastination means lowering the effort it takes to start, which the book calls reducing activation energy. Using small first steps and short bursts of focused work, such as the Pomodoro technique, makes it easier to begin and keep going. Fourth, memory improves when you use spaced repetition, visualization, and active recall. Engaging with information in different ways and over time strengthens what you know. Fifth, sleep and exercise are part of learning, not distractions from it. Rest allows your brain to store information, and movement increases focus and creativity. Finally, mistakes are valuable, and grit means having the determination to keep going even when things are difficult. This determination is what helps you succeed over the long term. When you put these ideas into practice, you give yourself a real advantage. You learn faster, remember longer, and feel more confident in your ability to master new skills. Your next step. That brings us to the end of our look at learning how to learn. The ideas in this book are simple to understand but powerful when you apply them. Start with one or two methods, practice them, and notice how your learning changes over time. If you enjoyed this summary, please give it a like and share it with someone who is also learning a new skill. We would love to hear from you. Which of these strategies will you try first? Let us know in the comments. For more book summaries and practical learning tips, especially for those improving their English, make sure to subscribe to Perfect English and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Remember, the way you learn is just as important as what you learn. When you use the right methods, you can make real progress and enjoy the process along the way.